Hello and welcome to Sim.bc, where it right now is 1:20:25. Yeah, it's just 1:30 or 5 to 1:30 to 2, something like that. I don't know how you say it. In the morning, yes, in the bloody morning. And I'm standing here and joining you here with a cup of green, as you say, as they say. That meant to come out a bit more manly than it did. Now that might have looked planned, but absolutely, unfortunately, wasn't, even though I could have said it now. Problems. And that is because you might need to anticipate more of those coming around, because just before this, I just sang through the song that I thought I was going to perform this Sunday, because I feel like I'm getting better and better and better, if I do say so myself, which I often do, but is rarely invited to do. Sad, but it's true. And that kind of tries my range, if I'm saying it like that, as a singer, so to say. And I'm saying as a singer, haha, I mean like an amateur singing in my own apartment. Yeah, but we're all starting somewhere, right? So I thought, why not try to take something that's a bit challenging and see where we can go with it. So that might be why some voice cracks might occur, right? But that's enough of that. Still too hot. Today, ladies and gentlemen, yeah, there was one. We're going to talk about how to move on. Yeah, sounds serious, doesn't it? So all like Lion King all over again. You know, you can be hurt by the past. You can skip over it, or you can learn from it. And that's basically the basics of what we're gonna talk about today. I know, it's incredible, isn't it? There is a movie out there perfectly summarizing the points that I will try to make. Even though I'm trying to make him in two different ways, because I would argue that both of them are valid. Whilst in the movie, they're trying to say that, you know, you should learn from your past, not just forget it. Whilst there is some merit to forgetting it as well. Yes, so join in, sit back, whatever you do, and join the conversation. And as per usual, I'm not an expert, right? I don't have a PhD in the subject. I'm not a professor in the subject. I wouldn't even argue to be. Well, I probably would argue to be after enough time has passed, but still, I am not. So please join in the comment section below, not only to say if you agreed or disagreed, but to expand the knowledge of everyone, right? Because that's unfortunately the only way that we can learn, isn't it? But yeah. Moving into it. Now, to begin with, there are two distinct different schools of thought when it comes to moving forward, and both of them are focusing on looking back, right? Or rather, the lack of looking back, but doing something with your past. To establish some context, one of them is, right, you've had a bad childhood, let's just say. We don't have to go too far, but let's just say that you were pretty sad most of the time growing up. You didn't get to play with the other kids. You might have been semi-bullied, and let's say everybody got to play football except you, even though you really wanted to. I'm not saying that's a trauma, personal trauma, but you're saying that could happen to anyone. Now, the first way of going about it is that you learn from your past, right? You try to say, well, it was kind of sad that I was sad when I was smaller, but all of the actions happening back then has shaped me as the person that I am today. All my past mistakes, all my past learnings have brought me to where I am today. There has been like cumulative thoughts and processes that have been traveling and exponentially growing me as a person. And I would be something completely different if I changed any of that, right? That also kind of spins into the philosophy that if you could go back and change anything in your life, would you? No, probably not, because you would be a completely different person who probably wouldn't have that opportunity presented to you at all. And you don't know the repercussions of changing anything, you know, the butterfly effect. So in order to keep all of that intact, we're saying let's learn from the past, be the person you are today, and the only thing you can do, because this is really the only thing that you can really do, is focusing on that future, yeah? Focusing on what we're doing tomorrow and be a better person. Perfect way if you need to deal with something that you did badly in the past and now you want to, in retrospect, kind of make it better. Now, you can't physically go back in time and fix it, so why not just be focusing on the future, learning on past mistakes? That's the first kind of school of thought when it comes to looking back in order to move forward. Now, the second one is not looking back at all. It's kind of killing the past, yeah? Or we can say unalive the past, yeah, that's probably more passive aggressive, or less passive. To unalive the past as good as you can. That basically means you probably think that the things happened in your childhood. You know, all the other people got to play football, but you didn't. Now, I'm not saying that you should go out and unalive everybody who was in contact with you when you were young, because once, imagine the logistics of that, just to begin with, all the travel expenses and not getting caught and all of the just resources that you need to manage. It's gonna be a huge hassle. No, what you should do in this scenario, in this mindset, in this school of thought, you should just theoretically kill your past. Imagine like it didn't ever happen, right? Not actually do out and physically do anything about it. And obviously the problem with this once moving forward is that you try to disacknowledge everything that has happened up until this point and say that I am who I am right now, and now I'm taking all of the decisions, right? Obviously you can't have an absolutist view carrying on that interpretation of your past, because it's impossible to forget everything. I'm saying impossible, I shouldn't. There's probably a possibility in the future, but as I know of, right as of now, there is no way of forgetting everything in your past, which makes this school of thought, this walk of life, this theory very, very hard to execute in reality, because yet again, you probably are who you are based on what has happened. Now, I might be biased to be thinking of one of them. Anyway, I was watching The Lion King when I was young, right? So that's probably why I'm leaning that way. Towards the learn from past mistakes and use it. If it hurts, then learn from it, right? Words of wisdom for a young kid and adults alike. Are we happy that it's coming back remastered in live action in 2019? Yes, we bloody are. Still too hot. Anyway. Knowing this, though, most people would probably go with it, you know, let's learn from the mistakes that we've had, and it's easier to get to peace with who you are if you say that, well, all of these things has happened. I'm going to fully acknowledge that and learn from it, adapt myself to who I am already, so I probably don't have to adapt that much, but probably adapt my future approach to life and just go with the flow, kind of go with it. Now, the other one does have merit as well, and that is kind of what I would like to talk about, because most people don't think to say that, right? Most people think to be like, kill your past, not a good idea, unaliving it, no, big no, don't do that, remember it, because it's who you are. However, if you think about something like a revolution, and I know this is going to be a bit far-fetched, I'm fully aware of that. A revolution is basically, in its essentiality, unaliving what has been before in order to build something new. Raise the current, what you would say, material, the current structure to the ground. Take away everything that we associate with what, well, society looks like right now, and make a revolt. Make a change it to something new. Now, I would argue that most revolutions have failed to do this miserably, right? Even though they have made some considerable changes, they just tend to do the exact same thing that happened before, but just renaming it a bit, maybe. That's just my interpretation. I'm not a history professor either, so what would I know, right? Just the interpretation I've had from, studying history throughout my life. Yet again, not in a professional way or an academic way, just in a hobby way, which to some degree is valid as well, but, take it with a grain of salt. But that idea of unaliving everything that came before you, the revolution, is essentially destroying your past in order to move forward. Now, I would like to say that this is more of an abrupt, direct approach to something. If you would like to make a change now, yeah? You don't want to wait a good, what you say, 5 years? You don't want to wait a good 10 years in order to get comfortable with what you did 20 years ago. You don't want to wait until you can just wake up in the middle of the night and you don't think about that kid who bullied you in the corner of the schoolyard in front of everyone to see. You don't want to just be lying there and thinking, I could have beat that kid up now if I was a grown-up going back in time, right? You don't want to wait 5 to 10 years in order to wake up and not think about that. You want to do it right now. That's where the revolution comes in, yeah? That's where the kill the past kind of comes in, because then you can just fully automatically just block it out. Try to block it out as good as you can, and every time you think about it, you can just be like, nope, ain't me anymore, nope, doesn't exist, nope, we're moving forward. Yet again, That's one way of looking at it, right? One can argue how healthy or unhealthy the behavior of blocking out feelings and memories actually are for you, right? Yet again, not a psychological professor either. But my fair assessment anyway, my shot in the dark, is that not acknowledging your feelings, probably a long run catastrophe. But yet again, we're not talking long run. We're talking short run. We're talking right here, right now. Live in the moment. Then I would argue that there are more merits to a short run solution in the revolution part of unloving your past, because then you could move forward right now, this week, this day, this hour. You can be a new person, even though to some degree you might actually just be fooling yourself or lying to yourself in order to make this happen. Could be true, but many people tend to do this. And this is what I kind of tend to think is the funniest part about this entire conversation. That many people would agree with me if I present them with two different alternative ways, thinking that either you block out the past or you learn from it. Most people will go with, oh, you know what? I also watched that movie when I was a kid, and many similar movies in the lesson that it's trying to teach, where they say that this is the good way of going. I'm gonna say I'm like this, and I'm like, yeah, that's 2 thumbs fresh, right? That's really good. But then they act in the other way. Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? Most people, yet again, tend to skew towards, and quite heavily so, like a qualified majority, if not more, like, we're talking like a good 70 to 80%, would probably say, or at least when I've asked, right? And I can only answer from my own context and my own history of how I've interacted with people in my circle of friends, right? Context. It's important, right? They tend to say that, well, I learned from my past. You know, I learned from my past. That's what I do, because that's what you're supposed to do, am I right? And then, yet again, they act in the other way. And it just turns out, 20 years down the line, even though I haven't lived for long enough to have friends who have had physical or psychological traumas and then be 20 years after, but let's just say 10 years after, 5 years after, sometimes even 4 or 2 or 6 months after, they come and say, oh, you know what, I didn't do it, I didn't learn anything. I just tried to block it all out. And then it pours down on you, yeah? As a friend, as someone who is always trying to be there and talk to them. I've done the same thing though, so I shouldn't be high and mighty, even though I try to be. No, we've all probably done it, which is also hilarious. We've all probably done it when we blocked out something and just ignored the feelings. Ignore them as good as we can. I don't want to learn from it. I don't even want to think about it. It's too hurtful. Nothing about it, not to diminish this in any way or shape or form, but most people tend to do that. When it's something that they feel is traumatizing or very bad, they don't want to think about it actively because it's horrible to think about. So we tend to block it out. And this is what we do in reality, even though theoretically people would say that they do the opposite and actually learn from it directly. No, what's more realistic to happen is that you kind of look, something happens, and instead of looking back at what just happened in order to shape your future in a better way, you say that, you know, I could live a good 50 years, maybe in harmony. The first year will probably be hard, but then the rest of the 49, 2 thumbs fresh. However, what I will tend to do is that I will have 6 months of heavy stress where I don't acknowledge anything that happened and I don't even learn about it. Where the entire experience will get worse. I will be heavily stressed for underlying reasons because of this, but I won't acknowledge it, so I will tend not to know, and I might even lie to myself so much that I don't know. The upcoming, 6 to 12 months. And then after that, when I have a mental breakdown, I will either go into heavy depression or I will have to deal with it then. And then I will only have 49 more years to live. No, it's probably less because I've stressed so much, so I probably have a good 40 years left to live, and now 1 or 2 of them, because of the increased trauma and increased stress and increased destruction of my life I've done over the last 6 to 12 months, will be dealt with learning about who I am and adapting to the situation that just happened, and then I will live my life in harmony. You kind of see the issue here, right? Yet again, this is how most people that I know tend to deal with traumas, because well, I would like to say because this X, Y, and Z, right? But I don't really know why. I guess it's easier in the moment to not deal with it. But it makes zero sense from a rational point of view. Something very harsh happened, and it's very hard to deal with. But rather to deal with it and try to share it with people that you know, you have this probably, I'm just going to say probably, generalizing, heavily generalization here. You probably have this idea of you're going to look weak in front of your friends, your parents, your sister, your brother, your grandparents, whoever it might be, a stranger on the street maybe. So that might be like an underlying pack behavior, survival thing from like thousands of years ago. Maybe that's the reason for why you don't want to tell anyone in your quote-unquote pack, that is society, right away what happened, and then you would like to rather deal with it on your own, fail miserably probably, and then deal with it when it's a much bigger deal than it just was. It's harsh, but it's true, isn't it? So these are two very distinct ways, anyway, of looking at the future based on the past. One is revolution, that most people would tend to say that, no, I don't do that. I ain't the person who's doing that, because that's stupid, right? Semi-irrational as well, when there is a better way. I tend to be the one who learned from my mistakes. What most people do, though, is the revolution thing. Or at least that's my experience of interacting with people and myself. Most people tend to do that thing. And what's even more funny is that most people tend to forget the way that Simba in the movie, The Lion King, went about in order to acknowledge this thing. Now, sure, he thought he did a deed, and then it turns out he didn't do the deed. But even after that, he was probably still mad about it. And even though he was welcome back, but it took a while for him to learn from his past. First, he kind of ran away from it, and that's yet again probably why it's such a good movie, because most people do that. People run away from their problems before they deal with them, which is semi-irrational and really weird when you think about it. We're evolved creatures. We should know better. We don't. It's just like me in the dust and the hair yesterday stuck to my sock, and I thought it was a spider and almost got a heart attack like twice. Yeah, it's almost as bad as that, isn't it? But it's just weird, isn't it? Just a thought that struck me on the bus today. I would like to know what you think in the comment section below, and I would like to leave a I would like to say disclaimer, but like a postclaimer to this video, saying that I do not deem try to demean depression in any way, and I know that most people have a hard time with things like this, and it can be a trauma to a more or lesser or greater extent, and those are things that you naturally probably don't want to talk about. But even though you don't want to talk about it, I would argue that it's probably still better if you do talk about it and share your problems with someone who is out there to listen, because most people have people in their lives who would like to listen, even though they don't recognize that they have them, or simply ignore it even though they know it. Yeah, it's crazy, but it do happen. So if you feel like you're one of those people, then please share with someone, and have that as a lesson after this. Try to share something with someone that you have never shared with anyone, and you're going to feel the weight being lifted off your chest, and based on that you actually shared with someone, they're probably going to be so happy they ain't even going to judge you, because that's probably what you're afraid of, isn't it? The social structure that's pulling us all down, simultaneously bringing us all up into a safety, or at least a perceived safety, triangle. Yeah. Don't really know how to end this now, but look to the future, trying to learn from your mistakes directly. That's what I'm trying to do. It's harder than it looks, harder than it seems. There's a reason for why this YouTube channel is still going. Anyways, bye.